Raw, Program 100, is a mixture of Thrash and Clag with a drop of fadeaway and rail guides thrown in, but it's also a random collection of subjects we find interesting. In other words, a microcosm of the previous 99 programs Visions has produced. Well, if you ignore the Steam programs and the bus programs. Or you can forget all that and simply watch high quality footage of trains motoring across your 80-inch plasma, like 37419 at Beesdale Tunnels on the West Highland extension. The opening section features locos towing other locos, an increasingly common sight since track access charges made it too expensive to move a loco on its own, especially for preservationists. Here at Upsmill, 56303 is shifting 50008, 37109, 56103 and 56301. Later the same month, D9009 heads north to Barrow Hill with 33108, 37521 and 55019. This is Stenson Junction. At the same spot, 37261 lets rip with a 57 in tow. Another DRS convoy has 47828 hauling 37409 and 607 and 2303, 301, 302 and 304 through Leamington Spa while heading from Eastleigh to Crewe in April 2013. Melton Mowbray produces 57002 with 57003, 47828 and 47818. They're all off to do a spot of weed killing at Stowmarket in October 2013. The Green Team, or Freightliner as it's sometimes called, enlists 70007 to move 66513, 70018 and 66606. Another preservation move, this time from the mid-Norfolk to the East Lancs. 31190 hauling 47579, 73130, 50026 and 47596. Heading to the mid-Norfolk at Barrow-on-Soar in September 2013, 37706 with Deltic 2, 56097 and D6700. Deltic 9 is taking D821 and D1062 to the Severn Valley. While here, 4145 is heading for Tyseley with Deltic 9 and D335. 31190 again with Mallard, Deltic 19 and 56311. A return move to York after the Story of Speed event at Grantham Yard in September 2013. Finally, all on its own, so not really part of this section, 56311 heads for Derby at North Staffordshire Junction to collect 56301. Back now to the first decade of the new century, sometimes referred to as the noughties, when Virgin 47s could still be enjoyed on cross-country workings. 47807 at Duffield in May 2001. 47844 restarts from Derby in October 2001, while Birmingham bound. The significant number of Loco hauled service trains in this period meant you could still go bashing. You remember bashing? Of course you do. 47845 passes Bredsall. .47843 at Spondon in April 2001. The Constabulary departs from Burton in the shape of 47829, a West Country service from May 2002. In the opposite direction at Burton, a few weeks later, 47828. Rail Blue, the recreation of it anyway. 47840, sneezing at Prestatyn in June 2004. Large logo, or another recreation anyway. 47847 sounds a bit rough as it takes off from Derby in March 2002. .47805 heads north out of Derby in July 2002. .47807 coasts down the Lickey and then switches the power back on. .47845 Birmingham bound at Burton a month later. 47831 makes a smoky exit from Derby. XB64 livery, the recreation, etc, etc. 47853 at Pear Tree in May 2002. .47843 Vulcan blasts off from Tamworth in April 2001. 47831 storms through Bromsgrove at the foot of the Lickey 1 month later. North Star again, this time restarting from Burton. And finally at Burton, 47829 again, opening up in May 2002. The Fadeaway DVD series showed the final years and the final survivors of classic locomotive classes. There were separate programmes on both the 60s and the 56s, but in recent years they seem to have faded back up again. How did that happen? 60073 heads for Lindsay with an oil train at Elford in September 2010. 56087 with the chirk-bound logs near Penrith in the summer of 2013. .60074 passes Shrivenham in February 2013 while working the Thiel to Robeston tanks. 56105 passes the now demolished Larbert Junction signal box with the Grangemouth to Linkswood aviation fuel tanks in September 2013. .6063 restarts a train for Lindsay at North Staffordshire Junction 1 month earlier. .56311 passes Hinksey with fly ash empties returning from Calvert to Didcot in February 2013. .60010 powering through Rue with a Totnes to Bescot rail train the same month. .56105 makes its debut on the Sinfin tanks in the summer of 2013. .60001's test run after its overhaul has number 7 coupled inside as insurance. .56094 works the Boston Steel at that junction in Derbyshire. At the same spot in Derbyshire, 60099 with a typically long tank train for a tug in August 2013. .56311 smoking nicely near Melton Mowbray before applying power. .60019 passes Sawley in May 2013 with the Lindsay to Kingsbury tanks. .56302 on the West Coast Main Line at Plumpton with the Carlisle to Chirk logs in June 2013. 60091 is wound up again after a signal check. And finally, in the fading up section, 56094 storming through Pandy with empty wagons from Chirk going to Gloucester. As you may have deduced from the title of this section, this is a selection of 37s thrashing. 37194 heads north from Carlisle to Kilmarnock and will make a noise in a minute if you're patient. A pair of 4s, 409 and 423 at Octorada with a Rose Street Inverness to Carlisle working. Network Rails 97304 and 303 get a clear run from their owners and open up while heading for Derby. .37, 612 and 667 stormed the Licky with nuclear flasks returning to Sellafield. .37 423 heads a Doncaster to York empty rails train at Sherburn in Elmet. .37 425 with 688 on the back, working a Slickford Yard to Inverness snow train at Heatherbell Level Crossing, January 2013. .37 402 and 688 again past Slates with 1Q13 from Whitby to Battersby. .37 423 and 409 at Kingswood while en route to Inverness, June 2013. .37 604 and 423 on hire to Serco, heading for Newport at Haresfield in March 2013. 37261 and 609 with more flask traffic at Filton Abbey Wood. Another shot of 37423 and 409 taking ballast to Inverness, this time at Dalnacardock. .37s are also available in maroon these days. West Coast 37676 is shifting a crane to Doncaster at Hatton North Junction in December 2012. .37423 and 409 for a third time at Ashfield. You can't beat a heavy ballast train for giving Type 3s a good workout. So here they are again, climbing to Schlod summit. One month later, 37423 is all on its own at Colton Junction while Doncaster bound. .37605 and 37218 top and tail the Carlisle Kingmore to Jaws Mash Junction nuclear flask in October 2013. .37685 collects a 334 unit from overhaul at Kilmarnock and returns it to Yoka in February 2013. And rounding off, 37602 and 610 with this northbound intermodal at Stafford. Returning to the subject of bashing, if you want to practice this almost lost art these days, you have the choice of either Class 67s or Class 67s. Let's start with the Marylebone to Birmingham timetabled service. This is 67012. 010 departs from Warwick with a Marylebone bound train in March 2013. You have to record this as a push. Number 13 leaves Leamington with the D1013 from Moore Street to London. Arriva Trains Wales used the 67s on the Holyhead to Cardiff route and on the odd special, like 001 and 002 here on a Wrexham to Wembley Footex at Hatton. In Scotland, 67s work the northernmost sections of the sleeper services. Here's 67004 on the Fort William portion at Ac Alada in March 2013. 2 days later, and now in April, 67009 heads the train at the same spot. In the south, 67s are heavily used on charters. 023 is going to Cardiff with the VSOE at Shrivenham. Drags, especially on the east coast, should also score you a few. 67008 passes Stowe on the Lincoln line with a Mark IV set and a 91 in tow in May 2013. Further north, 67020 heads for Newcastle with a diverted train at Dordon. So that's just a few examples there to get you started. Many of the previous 99 programmes have had a rail tour section, and this one is no exception. It's the variety, you see, works on almost every level. 2314 and 311 in orange at Valley in July 2013. 2189 and 142 are on the back in blue and red. 37605 and 607 restart from York while running from Edinburgh to Crewe a month later. 66181 on the Ammon Valley Ranger at East Usk in March 2013. The Cambrian Coast Express passes Glanhafen while en route to Pwllheli behind 97304 and 303. (47826) southbound at Acton Bridge with Northern Bell empties for Derby. (57316) is on the back. This one isn't overly thrashy or claggy, but it's in because you still don't see many Deltics at Dawlish. In fact, at the moment you don't see anything at Dawlish. This is number 9 on the 29th of June 2013, before the railway line disappeared, hauling Pathfinder's Mazy Day Cornishman to Penzance. Conversely, D1015 is working quite hard on the climb to A's Gill in July 2010 with the Western Fells Runner. The same day on the S&C, 37608 passed Waitsby with the Cumbrian Crusader 3. In June 2013, 47501 and 805 had an Aviemore to York charter at Dromocta. Here's some more DRS action in Scotland. 37607 and 602 going to Oban. The following month we catch up with the colourful 20s again, and we saw these last at Valley. (57006) heads the Royal Scotsman towards Stoke Tunnel in July 2013. (37610) and 608 shepherd some sheep at Brora while heading back to Inverness from Thurso. Western champion again at Halton with the Cumbrian Explorer in September 2013. And from March 2013, 37409 and 607 at Ac Alada, taking the Easter Highlander to Fort William. 2 months later, 47580 heads north at Rugeley with the Lakeland Moorlander to Carlisle. $47,760 is on the back. 2 days before that, 33207 and 029 take empty stock to Bowness and pass Cath Iron. Some Thrash comparison at Milford now, starting with 47790 on a Northern Bell to Bangor. Followed by 37194 and 604 on the Northumbrian Explorer to Almouth. Both shots from 18513. $97,304 and 303 head for Pwllheli at Norlin that same month. $10.15 on its August 2013 test run at Syston. Deltic 22 blasts towards County March Summit while en route to Fort William. $47,854 and 786 at Frinkley Lane with Hitchin to Carnforth ECS. And now a couple of diesel and steam combos. 33207 and Black 5 44932 at Upton Scudamore with Southall to Bristol empty stock in June 2013. Making more noise, 47245 pilots Castle Class 5043 at Waterman's Crossing while going to Birmingham. Returning to Scotland, we find 37610 and 608 providing entertainment at Culloden. They're also going to Birmingham, but from Inverness in June 2010. $60,063 hauls Pathfinder's Taffy Tug at Llanhilleth in August 2013. $47,828 at Shrivenham with a Cardiff-bound Northern Bell. $47,805 on the back. $37,609 and 218 working the Hullabaloo tour to Loo, obviously, in February 2013. Another chance to see 2314 and 311 on the GB Rail Freight charter to Llandudno at Abergele. .47501 and 805 again at Blackfoot with the Highland Clansman. .97-304 and 303 again apply the power at Welshpool while heading for Bristol. Wrong line by the look of it. Another view of 1015 on test in August 2013 at Shustoke. .47760 at Old Milverton with an Oxford to Carnforth Northern Bell, 57601 at the back. And another shot of the North Wales choppers, 189 and 142 at Rowton. .47805 and the Cotton Mills Express at Redbank in July 2013. .2312 and 37603 on the back. .2308 and 309 open up at Bowling with the Autumn Highlander from 2013. .37409 at D Viaduct with empty stock going to Aberdeen before returning south to Crewe. .47832 sets off from Lucas with a Northern Bell for King's Cross in August 2013. .2309 passes Belgrove with the Autumn Highlander empty stock, while going to Dalmuir 1 month later. .37607 and 602 growl along the west coast at Lockerbie while en route to Oban in June 2013. .37607 paired with 409 this time, and the Eastern Highlander to Dumbarton the previous March. And finally, a new route for Class 20. 302 and 305 take the Deviationer rail tour over the new link and new flyover from Hitchin to the Cambridge line in January 2014. .37194 is the compulsory back marker. Some built-in North America action now, starting with 66722 and a dead 66703 on some containers. Making the customary racket, 70016 with a Southampton to Trafford Park liner at Old Milford. Making the customary Clag, 70003, works for heavy haul at Stenson Junction, which you'll know by now is in Derbyshire, in August 2013. .66097 applies power at Waterman's Crossing to a Hinksey to Bescot train. The white cab-roofed 66177 with 136 at Anstey Canal. .70013 heads away from Towton in a southerly direction. The Rolls-Royce of GMs, Class 59, is represented by 202 storming Stormy Bank with an oil train in July 2010. What the hell is that meant to be? Whatever it is, 66718 is hiding underneath it, somewhere on the east coast. 66141 restarts a steel train at Melton Mowbray. Making the customary racket again, 70005 shifts the crew to Mount Sorrel through Tamworth. (66103) is towing 59001, 104 and 004 to Bescott at historic Warwick Parkway. Meanwhile, on the Lickey, 66027 pitches up with 66221, 230, 168 and the 4 o'clock Exeter to Bescott, with 66059 giving a welcome shove at the back. And when I say 4 o'clock, I mean the AM. And finally, 70007 heading for Ipswich near Gainsborough. This is a selection of non-standard and one-off workings that don't fit any category other than interesting. You can see how well focused all this is, can't you? For example, 47749 setting off from Honeybourne in February 2010 with stock for Llanwern. 31285 nears the end of its journey from Kilmarnock to Derby at North Staffs Junction. (2304) and 302 accelerate another underground stock move through Leamington in July 2010. (2301) and 305 are on the back. Derbyshire again, and 67016 opening up with a Derby to Crewe Serco working. 026 on the back. Since its return to the main line, Western Champion has periodically turned up on freight trains. This, for instance, is the August 2002 outing for EWS, the 6V70 Bristol to St Blasey. Coglow Junction, north of Taunton, 60085, dead in the train. The next day, 10:15 appeared on local China clay trips in Cornwall. It was too tempting to resist, I imagine. Here's the Loco at St Winnows. Some 11 years later, the 1000 was back on freight after it was hired to GB Rail Freight. But this is Humberside, not the West Country, and a rails train bound for Wellingborough. Make a note, the 5th of November 2013. As if that weren't unusual enough, 10:15 then spent a few weeks working a Mount Sorrel to Wellingborough stone diagram. The empties appear again at Kibworth Harcourt. GB Rail Freight has form when it comes to heritage traction. Remember the hire of Deltic 22 in 2011 to work the Alcan train in the northeast. Although the Deltic originally worked only the Linemouth to Blythe trips, it was inevitable that the rest of the Alcan move to Fort William would feature eventually. The most recent hiring to GB in 2013 pitched Deltic 00 into the EMU moves to and from Kilmarnock. Here's one of those trips with 2 translator coaches at Springburn. A departure from Kilmarnock, taking another refurbed unit back to Yoka. And finally, Finniston Station during another trip to Kilmarnock. Meanwhile, back at the slightly more mundane, this is the Northern Bell coloured 47832 working a Shirebrook to Daventry wagon move at Spencer in Derbyshire. In March 2013, 33207 moved some former Anglia DBSOs from Eastleigh to Derby. 2309 and 302 rock and roll across the junction at Colton while shifting an RHTT set from York to Gilberdyke in October 2013. Through summer workings to Great Yarmouth from London Liverpool Street have cropped up periodically. This one is from 2010. 47790 working a return trip from the coast. 90012 on the back will take the train forward to London after a reversal at Norwich. (31190) makes light work of 3 scrap wagons. (47580) has a few more in tow at Breaston. The Chaddersden to Shipley empties. (57010) and a DED 302 approach Carlisle on a departmental working from Ayr in June 2013. (57310) heads for the southern region with a brand new Electrostar EMU at Melton Mowbray. (57305 and 306 pass Ratcliffe Power Station while working to Tunbridge for Serco. (31465) deploys push mode at Leamington with a Derby to Didcot Serco in February 2013. (2305 and 302 at Bolton Percy while running from Hayden Bridge to Doncaster. Now this is about as noisy as a Class 73 gets. 73107 heading a firm part to Derby Serco working at Cossington with 73109 doing not very much on the back. Another Serco train rounds off this section. 31106 attacks the climb to Schlod on the Highland Main Line. At one time, retirement for most locos meant the scrapyard, but more recent traction has benefited from the many homes for the aged that have sprung up around Britain, like this one on the Kent-Sussex border, known as the Spa Valley Railway. A suitably decorated 37254 departs from High Rocks, but not high enough to need a stairlift. Some of the residents of these homes are especially aged, like this Class 14 D9526 at the West Somerset Rest Centre. Residents are also allowed to smoke at the Great Central Home, which is lucky because Class 31 D5830 is still on 40 a day. Oh look, the nicotine has turned it brown. The Seven Valleys brochure speaks of its idyllic surroundings and long country walks. Here for instance is 50031 stretching its legs on Erdington Bank. The North Yorkshire Shangri-La scores on both fronts. Beautiful scenery and a relaxed attitude to smoking. D821, which is only visiting for the day, is enjoying its time at Goathland. Class 28001 can now be found relaxing at the Nene Valley home, where Ferry Meadows remains very popular for picnics. Another day tripper, 47579, is enjoying the bird life at the East Lancs Sanctuary. .33110 now resides in the picturesque surroundings of Bodmin in Cornwall, where there's bingo on Tuesdays and Thursdays. The especially energetic 45133 on a rake of 11 coaches at the Weird Al Centre. Ooh, steady. Still, makes a change from country dancing, I expect. Another smoker, class 275401, resides at the GCR. Back to the East Lancs for a Class 40 resident D335. A Class 24 visits friends in the Severn Valley. One of them, D1062 Western Courier, was once a holiday romance in Devon. .25278 can still get about without a stick and is often allowed to go for long walks between Battersby and Whitby, as well as in the grounds of its North Yorkshire home. Hymek D7076 is a distant cousin of 1062, but can only afford a room at the East Lancs. Isn't that sad? Whereas 37142 lives with the Crompton, not in the biblical sense. That's the one we saw earlier at Bodmin. A Scottish visitor, 26038, does some rounding at Keighley. This one has recently had cosmetic surgery. Because of the financial crash, many locos had to delay their retirement and continue in full-time employment, but they can still visit their relatives in the various homes at weekends. This, for instance, is 55002 popping into the Severn Valley. We finish with 56103, one of the lucky ones able to retire early after making its fortune from coal, which it still appears to be burning.